How often do you think about the Oscars? About how many Oscar winning films there are and how many you've seen? Yeah, there's a few famous Oscar winning films that we've all seen, The Godfather and Lord of the Rings and Titanic, I'm King of the World, all that stuff. But the Oscars have been running since 1927. There are currently over 1,000 films, feature-length films, which have won an Oscar. How many have you seen? I did the numbers for myself. It's not many, and I consider myself quite a movie buff. So here then is the premise of this podcast. Every episode, I and a rotating cast of 2 guests will randomly select one of the 1,000 films that have won an Oscar, watch it, and talk about it, with the only requirement being that one of the 3 people on each episode has to have never seen the movie before we talk about it. That will get difficult with Star Wars. Please note that our coverage of a movie does not constitute an endorsement of it. My least favorite movie of 2016, David Ayer's Suicide Squad, won an Oscar for Best Makeup, while my favorite movie of 2016, The Handmaiden, wasn't even nominated for anything. Please also note that our coverage of a movie is not a blanket endorsement of any or all of the people involved in it. A lot of terrible people have won Oscars. Kevin Spacey won an Oscar 20 years before he was outed as an abuser, and Roman Polanski won one 20 years after. But every film, good, bad, or in many cases mediocre, that has won an Oscar is an important part of film history just for being there. And they all, on some level, deserve a tiny bit of consideration, even if that consideration ends up concluding that it's garbage.
And with all of that in mind, I am your host, as always, Ellie McConaughey. Returning with me, my podcast. We haven't done enough episodes together yet to be podcast wives. Podcast partner, Sam Marchioni.
This is better than Green Book. I will.
I promise the next one I rope you in on won't be about racism.
Thank you.
And also joining us again from Green Book is my buddy Todd.
Yeah, so watching this was kind of like, so this is like take 2 or the redemption tour. We got through the really bad one. Now we're taking a step up.
Yep.
Also, Ellie, you've established a pattern now. I go from a non-racist film to a racist film to a non-racist film to...
Oh no.
Or non-overtly racist. We're not gonna talk about the deep embedded cultural racism that dominates Hollywood as an industry, because that's an entirely different podcast neither of us makes.
Yep, I am too white to make that podcast. But we are here to talk about a movie about racism, 1967's In the Heat of the Night, which won Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Actor, not oddly enough for Sidney Poitier.
It is genuinely weird he wasn't even nominated.
Right?
Okay, look, I will accept F. Murray Abraham and Tom Hulce both being nominated for Amadeus in the leading actor. I have a lot more beef with the whole Lakeith Stanfield and Daniel Kaluuya both being in supporting actor for Judas and the Black Messiah. That shit made no sense. But how do you nominate Rod Steiger and not nominate Sidney Poitier?
To double back briefly on the Judas and the Black Messiah thing, I think everybody assumed that, well, Best Actor's going to Chadwick, so I do wonder what their reaction the next day was.
That moment, we're not talking about that Oscar, but like that moment is still one of the funniest. It is genuinely surprising to me that Sidney Poitier didn't get nominated, partially because, I mean, I guess he'd won like a couple years earlier.
For Lilies of the Field, yes, he did.
But also, like, man, he is so good in this.
Agreed.
He makes this movie, and just from a story structure, I defy you to tell me that the protagonist or lead character of this story is not Virgil Tibbs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's pretty much who the entire central, both external and internal conflict hangs on, so...
The only thing I can guess might have accidentally happened, and this does happen sometimes, like when they were choosing nominees, he was also in the movie that won Best Actress this year, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, which is not as good as In the Heat of the Night, but whatever. And maybe they like got split on it.
But Ellie, I would have an easier time accepting that if Spencer Tracy hadn't gotten a nomination for Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and I get he also had some momentum from it being a posthumous nomination, but like, this was a year where Sidney Poitier was in two of the most acclaimed films at the Oscars, and they showed no love for him, and I'm like, what are you doing?
I was saying this before we started. Like, one of the things that strikes me is whenever I look over, an Oscar winner from, let's say, more than like 30 years ago, which is like the 90s now. Christ, there's usually a handful of movies in there that have just like slid out of people's memory. This year, like, you look at our best picture. It's In the Heat of the Night, Bonnie and Clyde, Doctor Dolittle, The Graduate, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. You've also got In Cold Blood and director, Cool Hand Luke, The Dirty Dozen. Yeah, man, Bonnie and Clyde has so many nominations. It's just like this is a big year for movies that people remember.
Oh boy, Thoroughly Modern Millie's on the list. Would love to talk about that one.
Right, it won the score. Yeah, when we get to it, I'll rope you in. Is that about racism? Is Thoroughly Modern Millie about racism?
There's a Thoroughly Modern Millie racism that's pretty fucking glaring.
Oh boy.
If it's the one I think it is, oh god, yeah.
The Orientalism of it all.
It's interesting. What's interesting about this movie for our generation at least, and I can't speak to older generations, is I feel like my first exposure to this movie, though I wouldn't know it till much later, is a joke from The Lion King that I did not get at all.
Yep, now I remember it.
Okay, it's been a minute since I've seen The Lion King.
When they're having the big final battle, like they call Pumbaa a pig, and they kind of like do a little bit there.
Well, they do two bits within the bits, because they're doing the De Niro, you talking to me? You talking to me?
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes into,
yeah,
they call me Mr. Pig!
Yeah, which is a reference to a very famous line from this movie, They Call Me Mr. Tibbs.
I feel like I've seen that line as like a meme in the early days of online video critique.
Yeah, because that line got quoted a lot of places. Weirdly, the other I remember was that got used as a joke on Mystery Science Theater 3000. I distinctly hear Kevin Murphy in my head saying it.
To bring up another Oscar-winning film, it kind of reminds me of the milkshake scene from There Will Be Blood. Right,
yes.
Out of context, that scene is really funny. When you watch it in context, that scene is chilling.
I mean, from the same year, the coin toss.
The coin toss is another great one. Like, out of context, like what?
Ellie, fuck you for making me think of that goddamn SNL sketch that was just an extended I drink your milkshake joke.
Look, my previous attempt at a podcast, which this already has more episodes of, was on Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. So I have
Sorkin.
I have SNL thoughts. my fucking nemesis, Aaron Sorkin. One day we're gonna get to the Social Network, and I'll have to admit that's like the thing by him I like.
Did he have any other winners, or is that the only time for the rage dump?
I think he did. A Few Good Men win anything?
Hold that thought.
I don't know.
We are way off topic here.
Yeah.
We're talking about In the Heat of the Night, which is, I mean, it's a cop movie, but it does kind of like ACAB a lot.
It ACABs, but it's also like, oh no, Mr. Tibbs, he's the good cop. It's not exactly subtle about a lot of the elitism and snobbery that often goes into depictions of racism, depictions of the South as backwards and uneducated.
Oh, yeah.
In that way that just really only adds fuel to the fire in creating that divide. Like, in that regard, I think it's kind of... My Cousin Vinny did this a lot better, but
It did, yeah.
It's much more jarring here because the only quote-unquote northern representation is in the character of Mr. Tibbs.
What struck me about watching it, and Sam, I think this is you're the only one who's doing first time here.
Yep.
What struck me about watching it this time around is like, you're right, it is kind of like putting Virgil in a different category than the rest of the cops. But one thing that sort of struck me is like the recurring bit with the cops in the town is that they want to find a quick and easy person to pin this murder on based on their own prejudices, and then at the end the reveal is Virgil's been doing the same thing, and maybe his prejudice is a little more like better justified because he wants to pin it on the rich, white, incredibly racist guy, but he is still just like rushing to a conclusion.
Oh my god.
I don't know. It's one of those movies where like it's hard to 1967 in terms of like racial equality. It feels like a billion years ago.
I feel like this. Oh, well, there was actually apparently 2 sequels and a TV series.
It's weird they tried to make a franchise out of this.
Jarhead sequel syndrome apparently started before Jarhead. Jesus.
But I feel like if somebody tried to remake this now, it would end up as like an HBO limited series, and like Don Cheadle would play Mr. Tibbs or something.
It's a pretty safe bet.
You know what happened, John?
He fell into the Marvel pocket, and I think he's still trying to get out.
He pulled a Brie Larson. That's a shame.
He did it before Brie Larson.
Yeah, I'm totally off topic. No, like you're right, and I think Don Cheadle's a good pick for like a person because like one of the things that struck me about this is like even before Mr. Tibbs even speaks, like in the first scene he's in the movie where he's like being arrested by the cop on suspicion of killing the engineer guy who's coming in to bring a factory to town or whatever.
Mr. Colbert.
Mr.
Yeah.
Colbert. He's got just such an inherent air of like dignity about him that they just rely on that to sell how deeply, deeply undignified this whole scene is. Man, Sidney Poitier, he was something else.
He was incredibly impressive. Honestly, it kind of seeing Sidney Poitier in this movie kind of puts Mahershala Ali's performance in Green Book into like, I don't want to say copycat territory, but at the same time, yeah.
That was watching this. It was kind of remembering this movie predates Green Book by over 50 years, and yet it has aged much better in that time period. It's not perfect, but compare it to how, in the matter of 6 years, Green Book has aged like dairy.
I mean, like, yeah, Green Book came out of the gate feeling already like from a bygone era of American racial politics.
I'll raise you. Green Book hasn't aged like dairy, it's aged like avocado.
Oof.
You know what? I concede the point. Much better comparison.
But like one of the things, like again, this movie isn't perfect about it, and I don't caveat to this. I will say this multiple times. We're all white. We are coming at this from an outsider perspective, but I feel like this movie is a lot less cartoonish about how it depicts just like the subtle pressure of racism, even though it's the movie that has more direct violence. Like the ticking clock for the Tibbs to solve the murder is that when he got slapped by the rich white guy, he slapped him back, and now they're like, if you don't get out of town, he's gonna have you killed.
And I do kind of like that throughout the whole thing, that is, going back to your earlier point about they're just trying to solve this quickly. Even for Gillespie, his whole motivation is the sooner you get the solve, the sooner you get out of the town, and the less I have to worry about the idea of there's a dead cop I now have to deal with on top of this.
And it's very visceral.
Yeah.
Like this towards the end, the scene when those idiots in the red Confederate car are first coming at him, that's much more in the vein of cartoony racism, but then when they come back towards the end and it's like an actual goddamn lynch mob, it's edited really well and it is legitimately scary.
I mentioned this in the chat, like when we were talking about the movie, like not just like how is it better on race, how is it just this much better directed? Then I went and looked at who did it, and like, oh, Norman Jewison, the Russians are coming, the Thomas Crown Affair, Rollerball, which I like, leave me alone.
I'm actually right there with you.
Moonstruck, baby.
I mean, to Sam's point about the lynch mob scene, you look at the work in like Rollerball and Jesus Christ Superstar. Jewison gets some really solid editing in those movies.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I want to point this out. Like we talked about how they kind of caricature the Southern people, and they do. Like that's just not really. There's no getting around that. I will note that I have in my notes. There's a cop named Shagbag, which makes me laugh every time they say it. Orc ass name.
Yeah.
You're gonna go guard the Tower of Barad-dûr, Shagbag. I don't know. It's like it is a really well directed movie. I really like the shot of the guy they first try to pin the murder on running, like long shot that zooms in on him.
Oh, that whole
Yes.
sequence was really, really good. My one problem was that as the music was playing, the riff sounded incredibly similar to Adele's Rumor Has It.
Oh, damn it.
And
You're
so
right.
I just started dubbing it over with the song in my head.
God, I didn't even notice that.
I mean, I was just distracted by the fact that I watched this on the Criterion Blu-ray, and that's just the menu music they had. I hadn't even thought about that before, and now I can't unhear it. Thank you.
I find so. Let's talk a little bit about the chief. Gillespie, is that his name?
Yeah, Gillespie.
Gillespie.
Gillespie. Okay, he's such an interesting character to me because like right from the start, he's such a complete shit, and I don't know how much he actually improves over the story.
I was going to just take another dig at Green Book and be like, at least he's more consistent in how much of a shit he is.
Yes,
Mhm.
the fact we didn't have the proverbial "I am more black than you" scene in a movie that is over 50 years old feels like a blessing after last time.
It's something. If we get interrupted by weather again, I will officially call this podcast grouping cursed.
I'm looking at Clear Skies here, which I think is just proof that nature is siding, if it's joining us in terms of which it thinks is the better movie.
I've got thunderstorms here. No, like he is way more consistent, and he does like. I don't want to say that there's no growth from him. He does seem to get like closer to Tibbs, but I don't know if that's like character development so much as he like understands Tibbs better, and like he doesn't like him, but like gets what his vibe is. Actually, let me see. Let me see if I have it in my notes.
It's a situation where they're both very, very proud men.
Mm-hmm.
Like that scene when they're back at Gillespie's apartment and he's having that monologue that I'm sure was Rod Steiger's Oscar clip of "Don't You Pity Me? I Don't Want Your
Mm-hmm.
Pity," or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Like, it's very clear that they're both working with this very strong sense of pride and not wanting to be seen as incompetent, weaker, lesser.
It is, and like you see it. It gets called out explicitly at the scene at the train tracks where he's like tells him like you think you have to be smarter than everyone or else no one will look at you, which is kind of like correct. Like it's kind of just how the
Yeah.
world works
Yeah.
at that point. I actually had a note about that scene. That's what I went looking for. You know what scene? And you're gonna say that I'm crazy, but I swear this makes sense in my head. You know what that scene reminded me of?
Go on.
The scene it is similar in placement, form, and function to the scene in Jaws when they're all sitting on the boat talking.
Huh.
Am I crazy? Like, is
You know, I can kind of see it.
I was just watching that. I was like, did Spielberg like this movie?
I can't tell you whether or not you're crazy because this is the part where I reveal to you that I've never seen Jaws all the way through.
Oh wow, we'll get you there. Either your podcast or mine will get you to Jaws.
That fucking shark scared me.
Fucking shark scares me too. That's why it's a good movie.
I mean, it scared a lot of people, so
It's extremely funny to me how people like make fun of the shark for looking fake. I'm like, yeah, it looks fake. It's gonna scare the shit out of you though.
yeah.
What actually struck me about it, and that scene is the climax of that scene, or like the climax of the movie really, is that I think that what makes Tibbs an interesting character is like because he's black in 1960s America, he can go places and talk to people that the other cops can't. Like they specifically say at one point, like, "Where are you going? Where Whitey ain't allowed." When he goes to speak to the abortion provider, and I think that that's like they do focus a lot. Like the movie is very focused.
I was like so fascinated by just the whole abortion subplot. Sorry, go ahead, Ellie.
No, you're right. Like the abortion subplot is interesting because it's like that whole scene, like that scene is really uncomfortable where the girl who's gotten pregnant is, arguing with her brother and the two cops. And like but what sort of struck me is, and I don't know how much of this is me like projecting onto the movie, how much of it is an actual plot. It's clearly, in my opinion, her trying to make the other three uncomfortable
Shout out to that actress, Quentin Dean.
because she was lying about who got her pregnant, right?
She was, yeah. I believe
Yeah.
Ralph was trying to make Sam take the fall.
Yeah.
But goddamn, Quentin Dean was killing it in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Devouring it. She left no crumbs, as the kids say.
No, just like it just struck me as like, I don't know. I think that like the if we go to what his main skill is as a murder investigator, he's basically like a proto. Could someone name someone on not Criminal Minds, like on one of those forensic shows? I don't. I guess Bones.
I don't know either, because I don't watch those either, but you are right, he's that very methodical, very well versed. I don't know. My mom used to like watching Monk. I guess he was kind of like that, or like I don't know. The only other one I'm thinking of is Gibbs, because a mother's gonna love a Mark Harmon, a white mom's gonna love a Mark Harmon show.
See, as the best I could give you is Will Graham. Let's go with Gibbs on this one.
Will Graham. Do not be like Will Graham. Gaslit gate kept girl boss into dating a serial killer. The only, except for like the X Files, which doesn't count, and Psych, which
Wait, Ellie, I got it. Dale Cooper.
Ellie.
yeah, Dale Cooper's a good one.
Who?
Who are you gonna name?
No, I said who. I don't know who Dale Cooper is.
Dale Cooper is the main character from Twin Peaks.
Which unfortunately we cannot do on the show because David Lynch is always the bridesmaid, never the bride of the Academy Awards.
There are a lot of people in competition for that title, Todd.
Fair.
Celine Sciamma's also on that list, although she's a little bit younger than Lynch. Anyway, this movie, my joke was gonna be like, I only really watched, except for Psych and the X Files, only really watched Bones, and I'm gonna be honest with you, those episodes are 45 minutes long. I maybe watched about 6 minutes of any given episode.
Yeah.
They're ultimate background noise TV. He is very much like a forensic investigator, and the movie does make a point of that. I really do like the scene where he like is examining the body and listing all the things he needs.
Yeah, it's a really great thing. It's almost Sherlock Holmes of him.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that also helps in making him the main character because he's so professionally removed from all of this. Like, literally all he wants to do is get out of this fucking town.
Mm-hmm.
Which, actually, that kind of goes to one of the scenes from this that stuck out for me on this watch. It is after the fallout from him smacking Endicott, and there is that one line from Gillespie along the lines of, "You're just like all of us, aren't you?" And it really helps drive home the idea of, like, he is the other in pretty much every corner of this town.
Mm-hmm.
He is black.
Yep.
He is upper class. He doesn't really fit in with anyone here.
There's a scene very early on where they mention he makes $162
And 39 cents.
and 39 cents. And as I always do, I ran that through a calculator to find out how much that would be. That'd be $1,500 a week now, which
Oh my god.
That hurts right now.
right? I'm so poor. Donate to my currently non-existent Patreon for this podcast, I guess. He is very much the other, but I like one of the things that I really liked about this on the first watch, and I really liked it on the second watch, is how at the beginning of the movie neither of them want him here in the town. Neither Gillespie or I can't say that name right, or Tibbs want him to be there, and then in the middle of the movie, Tibbs doesn't want to be there, but the chief wants him there. And at the end of the movie, the chief wants him to leave, but Tibbs wants to stay. Like that is a fun shift of dynamic over the movie. There's just a lot of my notes are just like me noting really good, really small acting moments. I really like the scene where he like tells Mrs. Colbert her husband is dead. It's a very good like he goes to automatically comfort her and she like jerks away. And that's a really good, I like they don't draw attention to it.
That's Lee Grant. She's a really good actress and
Mm-hmm.
very storied career. She eventually won her Oscar for Shampoo, but she was also in Detective Story, and she
Oh
got
yes.
blacklisted. Be Kind Rewind has a really phenomenal episode on her, but
Hmm.
Valley of the Dolls. Yep.
for just for a very small part, she's doing very well. Like, honestly, it's her, Quentin Dean, and Sidney Poitier whose performances are really leaving an impact on me. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
haven't seen the other Best Actor nominees. I haven't seen those performances from this year, but like, aside from just how is Sidney Poitier not in the conversation, this performance from Rod Steiger does not feel very impactful to me. And maybe that's because it's so consistent.
Mm-hmm. It's not a very showy performance, but neither is Poitier. Poitier, I don't feel, was a very showy actor. I mean that in a positive way. Like my favorite performance of last year was Lily Gladstone in Killers of the Flower Moon, which is a very restrained performance. It's a good year. Like I will say, I don't know how Rod Steiger won. It is a good year. Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate, Paul Newman in Cool Hand Luke, Warren Beatty and Bonnie and Clyde. Like that is a stacked list right there.
Yeah, the only best actor in this list I had not seen is Spencer Tracy and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, but every other one I'm like, I can see what they're doing here.
Any of those. I mean, I think all four of those movies. Bonnie and Clyde is eligible. The Graduate is eligible. Cool Hand Luke is eligible. Yeah, every movie in the Best Actor race is eligible for this podcast.
Hmm.
Good. It's kind of a. I said this about the last year, and I hope I don't keep having to say this. I guess I probably won't have to say it for the next one. Like it feels very kind of like a changeover year in movies. You know, really the start of the auteur outsider cinema. You know, got Bonnie and Clyde and The Graduate. I think next year is when we start to really see Kubrick coming in as a major force. What was next year? Oh man, Oliver. Yep, there's 2001 in the next year. Hey, the next Academy Awards is one of the years where two actresses won Best Actress.
Woo! Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Lion in Winter and Funny Girl.
Also, one of the rare years where horror actually got one of the big wins.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, a grand total of one, but
For horror, that's considered a banner year.
Yeah, like Get Out wins a screenplay award and we're all like, woo!
mm,
Wait. Oh man, the next year is an even more fascinating year because in addition to that, that's a year where the best documentary win got revoked. What's the story there?
right. So Ellie, if we can like focus back in for a sec.
Yeah, well, we can circle back on that after we're done recording.
Sorry, I got distracted, everyone.
This is technically an adaptation of a book by a novelist called John Ball. I've tried to look him up. I haven't. From the looks of it, he is a white guy based on the limited number of pictures that I've found.
Mm-hmm.
He appears to be a white guy. He's from Schenectady originally, and apparently was a nudist for a while.
Good for him.
But my feeling is that that might be part of why Mr. Tibbs, to me, it's a little weird that the movie kind of acts like racism isn't something he has to deal with in Philadelphia at all,
Mm-hmm.
which feels awkward. Like, apparently, the slapping scene was not originally in the script, and it was proposed by Sidney Poitier that he would slap Endicott back,
Mm-hmm.
which I think was the right choice for this, but yeah, the fact that it wasn't in the original book from the sound of it, it makes me wonder. I don't know that I want to read the book, but like I'm curious. Maybe it'll pop up on a Dominic Noble video at some point or something.
Looking over his bibliography, it seems like Mr. Tibbs was like a recurring character, like a detective, a Poirot kind of character,
A Sherlock
Huh.
Holmes.
a Sherlock Holmes, which is interesting to me. Like the fact that there were sequels, and it did trip my like Jarhead sequels censor, hat tip Dan Olson, but also like I couldn't figure out like how they would do sequels to this movie that also, because they all apparently also have Rod Steiger in them. But the story's over. He has no reason to go back there.
Yeah.
He has plenty of reasons to avoid that town forever.
I don't know, man. Why did they fucking bring back Tommy Lee Jones in Men in Black 2?
I mean, to Ellie's point, they're just going off of the idea of the joke. There's a Simpsons line for everything. I just hear a version of that for this. Why would you want to come back, Virgil? You were happy. I was happy. The murderous racist mob was happy.
They were all like, I'm looking at these sequels. You know, they did okay.
Oh my god, the cast on some of these. Raul Julia is in the third one.
Oh, wow.
I didn't even know there was a third one. I knew about They Call Me Mr. Tibbs. I did not know they made a third.
It's called The Organization, which doesn't exactly give a lot of indication that it's connected to the Mr. Tibbs of it all.
Yeah.
I want you to guess. Like, don't neither of you look. I want you to guess how many seasons In the Heat of the Night got.
3.
Okay, Todd?
I'm going to be honest, I was also going to think 3. It seems to be the magic number for this entire discussion.
7.
What?
What?
He's no longer played by Sidney Poitier, obviously. He's played by Howard Rollins. 7 seasons. Man.
Jesus.
Wait. Whoa. Am I reading this right? Carol O'Connor, Archie Bunker is Gillespie in this?
Evidently.
Oh my god.
That seems, you know, some other podcast do a deep dive on the In the Heat of the Night TV show. I'm sure that motherfucker from Law and Order showed up there, so it's probably in the what's his name cinematic universe.
Dick Wolf.
No, the guy. Well, yes, him too, but no, the Saint Elsewhere bit.
Oh.
Oh, geez. The magic kid, as it were, for lack of a nicer way to put it.
Oh god, it's eligible for my podcast. Carl Weathers was in it.
You son of a bitch.
So to say, like, I'm not gonna say this super often. I think you can get better Carl Weathers than that.
Yeah.
Get Predator. Watch Predator. We should all just watch Predator.
Even Rocky 4, which is at least a campy delight.
We do love Rocky 4 here. We'll talk about Rocky someday too. I feel like if we get to Rocky, it'll just be a overview of the whole series. Yeah, I'm just looking over my notes. I do think, like, to go back to the ACAB thing. It's one of those things where I don't know if the movie is really, like, people in the 60s weren't really interested in that. One could make an entire mini series of documentaries on, like, the shift in perception of police that sort of happened over the end of the 70s to the 80s. It's turning from Dragnet to Miami Vice is the bit I'm doing here.
Yeah.
Thanks, Clint.
I mean, I think part of what it is that, again, the morality feels so tied up with Southern and racist that it's not all cops are bastard, it's all racists are bastards. And ¿por qué no los dos?
Yeah, and a lot of cops are also racist.
We're looking at a stack of pancakes here.
Yeah.
Although I will say to that note, again, kind of going off the Green Book comparisons, it is kind of interesting that after a while you get the sense there is no sense at the end of the movie that, like, Gillespie is magically cured of racism as much as just this one person he kind of has now come to respect as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's also, it's like a throwaway line, but I do think it's important. Like, after Tibbs slaps the old rich white guy, the mayor basically, like, and again, like, down to the editing being really good, the old rich white guy says to the chief, like, are you gonna do something about that? And there's just this, like, really quick shot of Virgil looking at him like, oh fuck, did I just get myself killed here? And then later on, the mayor says to him, like, the previous sheriff would have just shot him.
Yeah.
Claimed self-defense.
Yeah.
So I think that, like, that plus, like, the scene with the abortion doctor has two of my favorite bits. One where she tells him, like, being a cop is going to destroy your soul, and the other where he basically lays flat out, like, the justice system works very differently for white people and black people.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I had to pin down the movie's thesis on race, it would be still not great. We are getting a little better, though. I don't know if that's really a very strong statement.
Oh my god. So I'm reading the Wikipedia notes, and apparently the slap scene, I feel really weird calling it the slap scene because it just brings up memories of a certain other thing, but apparently it earned a nickname that I'm not sure I'm allowed to say. Uh Super Spade versus the Rednecks.
Yike.
Ooh.
I don't know who coined that. I think that is not my word to say,
No,
so I apologize, but
it's fine. You were describing it, you know.
It's not like we were dropping the really hard words, at least.
That's another reason I think this movie holds up better than Green Book, is because it says the word.
It says the word, but also like one of the things that really struck me again, like I don't know how much of this is me reading more complexity into the film than there is, but I like that the first time we get it is like when like previously the chief had just been like kind of being a shit to Tibbs, and then when he realizes he's having trouble rattling him, that's when he throws it at him, like, oh, here's another weapon that I have, and that's when we get the they call me Mr. Tibbs bit.
Yeah.
I also every time I know what you're talking about when you say like this, like bringing up other memories of the slap, but I'm just thinking of like that TV miniseries where one kid gets slapped at a party and then like I have no idea how that turned out to be a TV show.
Oh, yeah, like that Australian show where some American exec went, "We gotta remake this," like yesterday.
I TV man, TV's weird.
TV is very weird, but like the moment when the slaps happen, that's when the movie like really gets a shot of adrenaline, honestly.
hmm that whole scene's like really we keep bringing it back to Green Book, and we're gonna keep doing that. Sorry, Peter Farley, you earned it.
No, don't apologize. He knows what he did.
Sorry, not sorry about what we said.
Exactly.
Especially that interview you showed us. He knows what he
He
did.
knows what he did. There's a scene in that movie which really reminded me of In the Heat of the Night, where like they're stopping by the side of the road, and all the other black people working in the car stand up and stare at him, which really reminded me of like the drive through the cotton fields. And I just really, again, like very subtle acting moment when they get to the rich white guy's front porch and there's an incredibly racist statue.
Oh,
Oh god, that
yep.
thing.
It throws Tibbs off for like a half beat, and like again, that's all you need. Just like show it how it's affecting him.
And it's like just after that, the entire conversation, you could just picture Endicott jabbing him with every line.
Like again, like one of the things I like about the character and the way Poitier plays him, I like that he's like clear. He immediately cuts off talking about the murder to talk about flowers to get this dude talking, kind of condescendingly, extremely condescendingly.
Even when it comes to flowers, he can't not be racist.
Yep.
You gotta be racist about flowers, man. About flowers, you couldn't be normal about flowers. I guess we should talk about like the actual mystery, huh?
Yeah, so the mystery is that we find a man murdered on the street. This man was an engineer who was going to build a factory that was going to bring a lot of jobs into this town. And so it happened in the middle of the night, and the cops are going out to look for somebody. They find Mr. Tibbs at the train station because all he wanted to do was take an early train out of town, and they immediately profile him, and he keeps his cool throughout it and is able to start solving the case even before they realize it. And the widow is like, no, I want him on the case. He knows what he's doing. And it becomes a enemies to friends, reluctant buddy cop movie from there.
Yeah.
That we get sent on a lot of red herrings, which I'm kind of soured on in a post Disney is doing all the twist villains era.
Mhm.
But, you know, if it
In this one, I would actually argue it feels like it works. It doesn't feel like they're doing it just to go, what a shocker.
It does work to an extent, and I give them props for doing the law and order thing of it's always the person within the first 5 minutes.
It is.
But it's not who you think.
Literally, I like how they first do their first red herring is the first person, like the second person we see within the first 5 minutes, and then the actual killer is the first person we saw in the first 5 minutes.
We should have known he was the killer when he was hiding the pie.
Well, then also I kind of like that the other big red herring is they're making it seem like this is all about the factory. It's like the idea of he's going to have black workers here. And then it turns out, no, this was just one guy screwed up and tried to cover it up.
Yep. And, like, I think that's the best part of it is that we've kind of been trained by Scooby-Doo and whatever else to look at the greedy capitalist and be like, you have the most to gain for it. Bad guy, you are the bad guy. And also you're a racist. Bad guy.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that I like about it. Like, I feel like one of the ways, like, shitty dramas, especially, like, TV dramas do murder mysteries is, like, there's a character who's obviously the bad guy because they're a bad person. Whereas, like, no, Endicott is a bad person. He is a bad human being, but he didn't do this specific thing. Oh my god, we talked about Simpsons references earlier. Well, Bart, thanks to you, a horrible but innocent man is going to jail.
I mean, that's also what we think. Again, it's the movie kind of wants you in the same camp as a Virgil, where it's like, you want it to be Endicott so badly after how that scene goes down.
Mm-hmm.
Oh god, I bet Ryan Johnson likes this movie.
Probably. He does have good taste.
Mm.
I can admit a director, even when I don't like the director, has good taste. I don't like most of Michael Bay's movies. He does have good taste.
You know who else likes this movie? Akira Kurosawa.
I can see it.
Hey?
Yeah, I could see Mr. Tibbs vibing with just about any Toshiro Mifune character in a Kurosawa movie.
Serious. Again, you put down my first thought is actually High and Low, which is one of those films I put on the list of it's better than its source material.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to be honest with you again. Example of how Ellie's brain is completely sick. My favorite Kurosawa movie is The Bad Sleep Well. I have no excuse for this. I just love it.
That's a respectable choice. I mean, these days I'd kind of give the game point to Throne of Blood, but there is almost no wrong answer.
Seven Samurai and Ron are the big competitors. Seven Samurai. We're getting off topic again.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I do that too. This podcast is by its nature Tangent City. I'm just looking over my notes. It's one of those movies where I have trouble taking notes because, like, and this is a good thing because I just kind of want to watch the movie. Like, I took a ton of notes on Green Book because that movie was testing the fuck out of my focus.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it falls in. You mentioned this earlier. It does fall into the same trap of, like, racism is in the South, which I don't know. Maybe it's just because we never actually go to the North.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's kind of like another scene that feels there's a scene like very quick and they don't really come back to it. It's just kind of left on the table where like he says he's going to go to a motel and the black family who is fixing him up a car basically like laughs at him like, no, you're not.
They laugh in his face, but then we never see where he's sleeping.
The guy picks up his suitcase, so I presume that's like Senetki for he's sleeping at their place, which again, like, I wish, Green Book is all about the book that black people had to have to. It's named. Okay, it's not all about. That's my point. It's named after the book that black people had to have to know what hotels were safe. It's not really in the movie much. I feel like that the implication, since he doesn't know that hotels won't be safe for him, is that he is safe in the North. That's like not really true, is it, movie?
Not really.
Yeah.
I've been to Philadelphia and now it's pretty racist.
I mean, Boston is a whole cauldron of oh god.
In fact, the two of you are from Boston.
Yeah, as I say this is somebody who has lived the majority of his life in Mass.
Yeah.
And one other person who's in the same boat.
And I mean, if it makes it any better / worse, I'm now living up in New Hampshire, and similarly, oh boy, there's some pockets up here.
That's an out of the frying pan situation.
I mean, I'm a bit of an outlier in that I live in the People's Republic of Camberville, but we're not without our flaws either.
I'm just looking over. Usually I like to take some time to look at what it beat. We already talked about like the famous movies that it beat. Screenplay: Cool Hand Luke, Graduate, In Cold Blood, Ulysses. I'd never seen that.
I
Go ahead, say something mean.
No, I'm not gonna say something mean because I can't think of anything mean. However small it might be, I do have some Irish blood in me, and I cannot shed it, no matter how much the English blood in me wants to. I have the entirety of the British Isles up in my blood. It's a whole thing.
Ah, lads, not again.
Don't forget, it's there forever.
Why is this the Simpsons episode?
I have a problem. I will admit, I have a problem.
Todd and I have been friends for about 12 years. My God. And we have had conversations pretty much entirely composed of Simpsons quotes. I'm not. So I'm just looking over the technicals at one. Editing is definitely well deserved. Sound is very well deserved. Okay, here's something I gotta go look up because I don't know this. Was the song at the beginning recorded for this movie?
Yes, it was. It was composed by Quincy Jones. It actually got a Grammy nomination. Not a win.
It's interesting because like, how do I put this without saying? I feel like when I think about movies that are composed for films, like you know, Streets of Philadelphia for Philadelphia, that feels like it goes with the film. That feels like it is tonally in step with the film. In the Heat of the Night, I'm not saying it's not, but it's not. It feels like it's from a completely different movie. I don't know. Maybe I just have different expectations for a movie from '67.
Well, there is some analysis of it on the Wikipedia page, but this is composed by Quincy Jones, performed by Ray Charles.
Mm-hmm.
It does seem like they're trying to focus a black perspective in the music, at least.
Mm-hmm. Quincy Jones did not get nominated for this song. He did get nominated for something called Banning, The Eyes of Love from Banning. I don't know what that is.
I have never heard of it.
He at least got a nomination.
But the best song category this year is bullshit.
It's kind of weird. Like, the one music nomination he did get was for Best Original Score for In Cold Blood.
It's a great movie. You're right, though. This again, like Talk to the Animals. I don't know. I want to be impressed that they bribed their way to a Best Original Song victory. I'm more impressed that they bribed their way to a Best Picture nomination.
No Academy take for me will be more die on the hill than, like I said before, Best Original Song is the Russian roulette category of it's either, what, this great song was nominated, or what the ever-loving hell is this doing here?
I joked in one of our chats earlier that like my hot take about Dirty Dancing is that Hungry Eyes is a better song than I've Had the Time of My Life, and everyone agreed with me. So I'm like, so why didn't get the nomination or the win? But then I'm gonna just repeat what I said at the last Oscars. What the fuck is Red Hot? Fuck you. No, they didn't make a movie based on the making of the Flaming Hot Cheetos. Shut the fuck up. You're lying to me. As much as I am a huge Oscars nerd, half of that is being like, yeah, I love the Oscars. They make the stupidest decisions sometimes. I don't know if I'd really qualify this as one of their stupider decisions. I mean, the movie, Best Picture.
Wait, sorry. What are we
Good.
talking about as in the context of a stupid decision?
I am bringing it back to this movie. I don't know if I would qualify this movie winning Best Picture as one of their dumber decisions. They did the Best Picture, Best Director split with The Graduate and this, so
Look, the important thing is it didn't go to Doolittle.
true. What were you gonna say, Sam?
Well, I was gonna ask if, like, at any point down the line, did like Sidney Poitier and Rod Steiger ever present anything together? Like, I'm just flashing back to Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway showing up and nerfing the presentation of Best Picture for Moonlight.
Steiger,
And
Oscar.
since that was the same year, they couldn't have done the 50 year, but did they maybe do like the 25th year or something?
I'm not finding anything where they presented together, but Rod Steiger did present Sidney Poitier's AFI Lifetime Achievement Award. So,
Well, that's nice. I did look up his speech. He thanked Sidney Poitier last in his speech as like the most important contribution to his performance. So that was good
mhm.
of him. Apparently they had been wanting to work together for a really long time.
Yeah, I looked it up, and apparently they'd been friends for a while. I don't think they don't have chemistry as like, I think when I say chemistry, people assume like, oh, they're good, they they're good together. Like, no, I think they have chemistry in that they bounce off each other really
Yeah,
well. You
yeah,
know,
like the entire nature of that
Yeah.
dynamic is like it's a sort of antagonistic respect, and they get that well.
hmm but I do really like the scene
Yeah.
at his apartment. It feels very restrained and kind of sad. These two people who are like, how do I put this? Who have like obliterated their lives on the altar of being police officers. You know, Again, it's like one of those things that I think the film doesn't really dwell on, but like it is very clear that being cops is like cost these people their entire personal life.
Yep.
Yeah, kind of like I mean, it's there in bits and pieces. Like you look at the way a lot of the other, it's like you look at the way Gillespie interacts with the rest of the force. They're all chummy with each other, except Gillespie, who's kind of just seen as the hard ass boss to them.
hmm
And in that regard, he's
And we have like that little subplot of fix the gate.
yeah, he's not to the level of other in this area that Virgil is, but he is still seen as kind of an other within his community.
An interloper.
We're about an hour into this recording, so now we got to get serious. We really got to think about the Christian and Greek allegories of this town being named Sparta, but Mr. Tibbs' first name being Virgil. I want a 3,000 word essay on the Divine Comedy on my desk.
Ellie. Ellie. It's not that deep. They were just primarily filming in Sparta, Illinois, and they wanted to change the name so they didn't have to change the signage.
I do love stories like that. Like one of my favorite production stories out of Breaking Bad is it was originally going to be set in like Southern California, and they were like talking about how much it would cost to digitally airbrush the mountains out of the backgrounds of a lot of shots. And basically Vince Gilligan went like, why can't it be just set in New Mexico where we're shooting?
It can't all be the X Files using Vancouver as everywhere else.
The rainy pine forests of Idaho. Also the rainy
Yeah.
pine forests of fucking Florida.
Yeah.
I love the X Files.
Apparently, they had no idea that there is actually a Sparta, Mississippi.
There is. That's even better.
There is.
They don't really like do much with geography. They don't really need to, but like they.
It is nowhere near any of the landmarks that one would have seen in the movie. It is.
Yeah, there's like the only real geography we get is there's the chase scene with uh Harvey. Is that his name?
Yeah.
Okay.
Harvey Oberst.
Where he's running from the cops because he found the dead body, and he's kind of a transient, so he takes the money. Like obviously, and the cops are trying to run him down, and he's trying to run across the bridge from Mississippi into, I think, Kentucky.
I thought it was Alabama, but
It's not important. The point is, like, that's the only kind of landmark we get. Other than that, it's Mississippi. That's all you need. That's all you really need.
yeah. Apparently, they were primarily nervous about filming south of the Mason-Dixon line. So most of this was shot in Illinois, but a few scenes were shot in parts of Tennessee.
I mean, like, I can understand that. This was a weird moment in American history. We just had the Civil Rights Act. Roe v. Wade was, abortion is a major subplot in the movie. Roe v. Wade is still what, like 6, 7 years off?
Yeah. The way that scene turns on a dime, part of me was shocked that they took him at his word that she had the money in her purse for an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
Because generally, when you see a black man and a white woman in a confrontation like that, the black man is not the man who gets believed, but
Mm-hmm.
they do it, and
Yeah.
things kind of spool out from there very, very quickly.
Yet, racist guy gets shot, murderer gets arrested. Love it when racist people get shot. I do feel like the first time I watched it, I do feel like it was kind of like the end of Get Out, where you're like, the cop car pulls up and you're like, ah, fuck.
Oh yeah.
Before, again, like hitting you with the subversion. I don't know, like, I don't think, I don't want it to end any other way. It might have been more realistic for Virgil to still get killed, but man, I don't need that.
And I feel like we got the sufficient realism point in the aftermath of that during Ralph's confession, where it's like you can see the more cliche version of that scene where it's the over the top dramatic confession, and he's instead kind of, it's just the very matter of fact, I didn't mean for it to go down this way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he's just more like this very tired, deflated, this wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is kind of like, I don't want to say it's a downer ending, but it's kind of a downer ending. It doesn't really, they catch the guy, and it is kind of a, that's it.
It's an ending. That's enough.
Welcome to the party.
Everyone's making Simpsons rap. Which I like. I like, my favorite murder mystery movie is Memories of Murder, which ends on a note of, you'll never know who did this. It'll torment you till you die. Bye.
Oh no.
It's a great movie, but it's also a Bong Joon-ho movie, which means that A, it's really good, B, it's kind of depressing, and C, it's about class.
Yeah.
I love the man. He's got themes he likes. So, yeah, and then Tibbs just leaves to go back to Philadelphia until the sequel, which I haven't seen and never will.
Yep. Apparently they're they don't have Gillespie in them, so again, just reiterating my feeling, why not Sidney Poitier nominate?
Moments like this, I would kind of love like that proverbial fly on the wall to how the Academy politics broke down in some of these selections.
PricewaterhouseCooper, I demand to see the ballots.
I mean, like, look, I don't want to accuse the Academy of anything, she says, moments away from accusing the Academy of anything.
But you're gonna power through it.
But I'm going to power through it. Up until recently, hell, extremely recently, there's been controversies at the Academy for non-white actors not getting nominated. You know what all 5 of the actors nominated, including 2 from movies about black people, have in common?
Wait.
Rod Steiger, Warren Beatty, Dustin Hoffman, Paul Newman, Spencer Tracy.
Yeah.
I can't quite put my finger on it.
Yep. I'm running through all of these. No, none of them. I don't think any of the nominees this year. Okay, we have one non-white nominee in Best Supporting Actress, B. Richards, for Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
Technically, we have Carol Channing too.
Carol Channing, okay.
Carol Channing's mom was African American.
Huh.
But yeah, those 2 are it.
Or grandmother. She's her dad was
biracial.
multiracial. But yeah.
I've decided I'm not like the Republican Party. I understand how biracial people work.
Oh, dear God.
Oh, that's been something else lately.
I really desperately hope that joke ages like milk. I really hope that by the time this episode comes out in like 2 weeks, they're not still doing it. They're still going to be doing it. Yeah, I think that's it. Anyone have any parting thoughts for Mr. Tibbs?
Sidney Poitier, I am sorry you did not get acknowledged by your peers for this work when you should have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't second that.
And also, PSA from one elitist, leftist, northerner, East Coast Illuminati to the rest of us, stop equating Southern with uneducated and immoral and racist. Like, you're not helping. You are not helping.
I brought up Get Out a minute ago, and like, I think one of the things that makes that movie, or like its closest sibling, Sorry to Bother You, hit so hard, is that they don't pretend that like only Southern people are racist, or even like only people who overtly hate black people are racist.
Yep.
The Bradley Whitford with his "I would have voted for Obama 3 times" line. God, that movie rules. I will say, Sidney Poitier, an actor, not Oscar-winning movie of his, which I feel like more people should see, is Raisin in the Sun. He's really good in it. He's really good in everything. Yeah, that's it.
Just a very charming actor.
Very charming actor.
Very compelling, very dynamic.
And he could do really big stuff. He could do really subtle stuff. He's doing a lot of very subtle work in this movie that I think makes it really. I think that with a lesser actor, this movie wouldn't pop quite the way it does.
In general, I gotta hand it. The movie doesn't really have much to have quote unquote big performances, and I think it's better for that. It's a lot of very understated touches.
Definitely, and that's usually the stuff I like anyway. Anyone got any plugs they want to do?
I am the host of 6 Degrees of Star Wars, the podcast where we explore all the ways George Lucas's flagship franchise surrounds us, binds us, and penetrates us in the landscape of cinema. It is available wherever pods are cast.
Todd, do you have anything you want to plug?
Not really at the moment. I am continuing my summer dive into folk horror, but that is not going to be a thing that's going to be viewable in any format until October, so...
Fair enough.
As always, I can be found on Football and Tuxedos at tumblr.com, with dashes between all the words, and on Twitter and Blue Sky at LSR42. My Medium page is also LSR42. I post there once every 6,000 years. And you can also find at iwanttoreview.blogspot.com my blog where I reviewed every single episode of The X-Files and The Lone Gunman. It took me 7 years.
And next time, I am giving Sam a brief break
Whee!
as we go back further in time to a movie that I'm pretty sure most of you know the title of, even if you've never seen it. The Picture of Dorian Gray, 1945, co-starring someone named Angela Lansbury. You ever heard of this person?
Oh my god, I love her.
Mrs. Lovett. The only Mrs. Lovett.
Murder, She Wrote.
Mm.
Thanks, both of you, for coming out.